just when you think you're done. Just when you think you're done. You try it again to see if it still works. And you end up with the nightmare recurring. Remember that shitty CMOS battery? How the date and time was never set? We know that the thing can load Windows. We know that. Oh, now it wants to work. Okay, buddy. Sure. So this means that in reality, it's the worst word in the English language. Intermittent. Intermittent problems. The CMOS battery is not dead. It's dying because it can't hold the clock all the time, every day of the week. That's guys. Disk checking. Come on, dude. Crazy. All right. I don't want to do that. Skip disk check. Come on, bro. Maybe it is the grinding sound of the hard drive that sounds weird. See? Look. It is not December 6th. Look, the Casio says Tuesday the 2nd of April. This guy says December 6th. That's great. That's just wonderful. Let's look at the bottom corner. System time is completely off. You get freaky stuff in the BIOS, and loading the boot image can't properly. Taking ages. Alright, look, see? 12/6/2019. Thinks it's 2019. It isn't. And like, sure, I can set the time and date, but I guarantee you it won't remember it. Code. I would love to set up OneDrive. No, I don't. Set up time, change time and date. Right. Set automatically. Thank you. This guy is still saying change time and date. Great. I want my day to be today, which is April the 2nd of 2024. Time is 8. This mouse. Okay, this mouse is actually getting thrown in the fucking bucket. Change PM. My time zone. Oh well. You don't need to know about that. Okay, cool. So it should be set properly. No, it says it's 11. Like, hey. Whatever. Did I not change it to 11, buddy? 8. EST. Cool. X. So now let's see if it remembers the time of date, or if it's going to give me BIOS arrows like it did earlier. I'm going to shut it down. Now I'm going to take another step. I'm actually going to test to see if the CMOS battery is holding a charge, or holding a strong enough charge to where the BIOS chip can remember its, or the CMOS chip or whatever it is, can remember the date and time. And by that, I'm gonna unplug it from the power, from the plug here. I'm gonna wait 30 seconds. For you, it's gonna be maybe 2 seconds. Its own little testy test. Fan spinning. Okay, turn the power button back on. Let's see what we should get here. These are running. You have the Dell splash page. Not touching nothing. See? Time and date not set. So it is forgetting. Aha! Okay, great. Now we get to fix that. Okay, so in the last video, we got it to boot. We got it to load Windows. We got it to do all that stuff. The time and date was fixed. And right as when I pressed the stop recording button, I was like, nah, this is too good to be true. You know, like whenever you see time of date issues like that, typically there's something underlying. And the real meat of the potatoes of this is when you turn your computer off and then you turn it on again, how does it know what time it is? Think about it, right? In reality, what occurs is even if you unplug your computer, completely drain the capacitors in the power supply unit, the computer still knows what time it is. And that's because your BIOS settings and your date and time settings are stored within a chip, your CMOS chip, and said chip is powered by an independent battery called your CMOS battery. It looks like this. Most of them come as CR2032s. Now, if you're having similar conditions, that's probably why you're on this video. I suggest you go get one. These batteries have an advertised voltage. I think it'll come in the video or not. Again, you're on my forehead, so I can't really tell. Of 3 volts. Now, much in the same way that a car battery, even though it's advertised as 12 volts, you don't actually want to just see 12 volts in your car battery, especially if it's running. If it's running, you want your alternator to charge the battery. So ideally, if you took a multimeter to it, you would see maybe 13.25 volts, maybe 13.5, right? So if you see 12 volts on a battery that's charging, or 12 volts on a battery in general, and your car's not starting, it's because your battery's too low, which is why you need a jump start. You need a jump start to, you know, jump over the low voltage curve. In addition to that, you also need it to provide the amperage to crank your car over. Regardless, the point is, you want to, if you're going to multimeter test your CMOS battery, you should see at least 3, if not more than 3, maybe 3.5 or 3.25 volts across the CMOS battery. I already checked mine, and that's not what I have, but I'm going to show you how to determine whether or not you have this problem without even testing it without a multimeter, right? So let's go back to our Dell Optiplex. We have our hard drive with Windows 10 on it that is being prevented from booting because of the fact that it doesn't have a CMOS battery attached to it. Now I just realized that I forgot to plug in my mouse, but we don't need it for this test. So it says here, time of day not set, even though the time of day was set. I can continue and ignore it, or I can set it up. So I'm going to press F2 to set up. Now this screen looks familiar. Let's go back to date and time, and do you notice it went back to 9/9/13, which is its default time that we saw in the config menu. Okay, maybe I do need my mouse. Okay, cool. So let's go to date and time. Let's highlight our month. This mouse. I keep complaining about it, but can I afford a new one? No. So date and time, right? The current date is 04/03. Now you don't actually have to have an accurate date to test if your CMOS battery is well and active, because what you're really trying to test is whether or not it can remember your sample date. So if I said it was 1995, or if I said it was 2006, it should still remember if it's 2006 whether or not it's 2006 or not, because it's restarting back to 2013, which is its default value, the date of the manufacturing of this motherboard. That's why it's doing that. It doesn't matter what date you give it, right? You don't have it doesn't have to be today's date. It doesn't have to be the current date of when you watch this video. It just has to be a date, and then we're going to power drain the system and see whether or not the CMOS battery has enough juice in it to keep the chip alive to remember the information that I've just pushed into it. Now remember, changes in time and date are, take effect immediately, and I can't click the apply button. So technically speaking, what Dell wants me to do is click exit, and then it'll reset the system. You can see that the CPU fan spin has gone away. Okay, so continuing on. So Windows is now booting. So it went through post. The CMOS has enough residual juice because the system hasn't gone through a full power cycle to remember the date I give it. So post didn't interrupt me and say, hey, wait a second, your date's not working. Now it's skipping this check because of the fact that it lost the date and time. But I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to force power off, which you should never do while it does this because you might get corrupted errors. But again, that's the beauty of a beater build. And then unplug the PSU. Now what's occurring right now is that the PSU, which has its own internal grounds, is draining itself. But what's most important is that the CMOS battery, which is right here, is the only thing that's supplying the BIOS chip with enough juice to hold the date and time information that I gave it. Now, knowing that the CMOS battery is bad, it'll reset itself. Now, one way you can reset the date and time on a BIOS manually, besides doing it in the BIOS menu like I just did, is by I have to check if I'm still recording. Okay, is by taking the battery out, letting the system fully drain for about a minute, and then putting it back in. What will occur when you turn the system on is you'll get that splash page that says time and date not set, because it recognizes its own default value and says, hey, wait a second, I've reverted to the default. Time and date is not accurate. Time and date has not been set. Please set the time and date. And that's because even in a healthy system, if you take that battery out, it'll drain all memory logs in the BIOS of the time and date. So this being a good battery, an alleged good battery, I should be able to replug the PSU, energize the whole system, and because that's a alleged good battery, this battery should have maintained the memory log within the BIOS chip that says the time and date that I just set 5 seconds ago in this video. So I'm going to replug the system. Now, it might work because things are intermittent like that sometimes. But then again, it might not. And if it doesn't, fantastic. So the system's going through its self-checks. And then I'm going to press the on button after it does its self-checks. I keep getting caught lacking by this thing. It does a self-check and fan spin twice. So you have to wait for it after a complete power drain. Okay, now you can see the reality of the issue. Time and date is not set because I drained the BIOS chip. I drained the BIOS chip by draining the PSU. However, in a perfect system, in a perfectly working system, the CMOS battery should maintain the time of date within the chip. I've already taken this chip out, but off camera, before the video even played, I took the chip out, or I took the BIOS battery out, the CMOS battery out, and I tested the voltage, and the voltage is low. So this battery is a known faulty battery, but I want to demonstrate this issue. Because I've demonstrated me flashing the date to you live, the possibility of me not flashing it before the video is not the case at all, right? So now that we know it's a bad battery, or potentially a bad battery, we can throw in a new one. And these things are pretty cheap. Again, the part number, 2032. Now, please don't get
Chinesium stuff, okay? Now I want you to, for the boys back home, the guys that are, I don't know, people who work on big fancy computers that are thinking, aha, specifically some of the people that I know, if you're thinking the CMOS battery is the reason why your machine or your server or your computer is doing what it's doing, I want you to really think about this. If your server's motherboard was replaced in the past year or the past 2 years, the CMOS battery typically wouldn't have fully drained and died out by then. This system is 10 years old, and if that's the original CMOS battery, I'm not surprised in the least that it's fully dead, especially considering the fact that this system was probably unplugged on a pallet in a warehouse for a long period of time. That being the case, this time and date problem is not making me panic because of the fact that all of these realistic examples or all of these realistic scenarios can factor into a dead or dying battery. So I'm going to fully turn off the system with the power button, unplug, and now I'm going to show you a trick on how to if you're wondering about the Subway Surfers, it's a running joke among some of my coworkers. I hope we can see this in the shot. So you see this little tab here. A lot of people, they're very gentle with this thing, and you really don't need to be. You just need to remember, metal screwdriver, PSU unplugged, no risk of shock, right? Yeah, just in case. So you just need to go over to the side and violently press forward and flick it. Now the dead battery's out. Now do yourself a favor, because I've seen this happen before. Get yourself a Sharpie. Mark the bad one. Set it off to the side. Take your new battery. Now, people have said to me that you don't want to touch both sides of the battery because it might drain yourself through the sweat of your hands or something. They're also the type of people to wear anti-static wristbands when dealing with computers, which is to say, they're absolutely correct. However, I'm not gonna fall. I'm not doing that. Come on. Now you sound like the type of guy to torque all of your bolts to a proper torque spec. Me, I just snap the bolts in half. To care about their advice, I always hold it by the side. And down. Press the battery down towards the spring, and then push fully down. All the way in there. Okay, now that the battery's in there, we can clean up our workspace. Take our display port, plug in our PSU, put our fingers near the CPU fan. If none of that came up on camera because I forgot to turn on the light, that battery right there, push the spring to the side, pop out, replace it. Easy peasy. Cool. So now it's loading. We have a Dell splash page. So this time of date error that we're seeing on the screen right now is totally okay because we just drained the CMOS battery that was already dead, right? Now what we're gonna do is we're going to press F2, scroll down to time of date, date and time. Now it reset, right? Which is typical. It makes sense that it reset. It was like this before. Go back to 04. Go back to our current date. Now I'm using the current date instead of a sample date because I don't want to change it again. I want to, if it works, then great, it works, right? 7. If it didn't, if it works and I chose a different date, then I would have to like go back and change it, and I don't want to do that. That's actually not correct. Yeah, donate to my Patreon. Give me a mouse. 13. Cool. Now that should work. We're going to press exit. So the system just did that. Now it's doing its power on self-test. And it's going to do that disk part thing again, which I don't want. So I'm going to power drain the system. Fully power drain the system. Now that I flash the BIOS chip, and that the battery and a new battery is in there, ideally the date should be saved, and I should not have to change the date again. So I'm going to give it maybe about 10 more seconds. You know, think about it this way. I don't have to wait a full minute or a full 30 seconds, considering the fact that, you know, our previous condition, I only waited maybe about 10 or 15, and it didn't remember. So, you know, I'm going to plug it back in. And it does its power on self-test, or it does its, you know, pre-screen system testing, fan spinning. Now I'm going to press the on button. Dell splash page. And Windows. See? Wonderful. So now I should never have to deal with setting the date and time ever again. And when I boot Windows, the date and time should be accurate to the system's date and time. I hope you learned something, and have a good one.